is happening, sports fans? Happy Monday, and it was a fine Tampa Bay sports weekend. Bucs win, Bulls win. A lot to talk about today from both those games, and we have preseason hockey tonight. The Lightning are going to be in action, and some significant Tampa Bay Rays news as well, as it has been. We'll dig a little bit more in the article just put out by Mark Topkin. I do not believe the sale is official of our Tampa Bay Rays, but it has been approved by the MLB owners, which is incredibly significant. We will celebrate that. Hope you had a very good weekend. Hope it did not go as fast for you as it did for me. It was a nice weekend. I got to go to a crawfish boil, which is incredibly rare up here in the Midwest. It was phenomenal. Very refreshing. Fun fact for you, I have always associated crawfish boils pretty exclusively with the South, Louisiana specifically, but you can find in most places in the South. Crawfish boils also big in Sweden. Fun fact for you there that you may have known. I certainly did not. Got to listen to the first half of the USF Bulls game on Saturday. Actually, it was about the first quarter and a half. Got to watch the second half of the second quarter and the second half on television, and it truly was a tale of two halves. That game kind of started how I thought it would go. South Carolina State marching down the field, and Mac Harris, who ends with a career day, just a disgustingly good defensive performance. I want to pull up the line here for Mac Harris. 10 total tackles, 4 solo tackles, 2 sacks, 2 tackles for loss, and of course that pick 6, which was the only score in the first quarter. And if you listened to the show last week, I did think USF was going to win this game. However, I thought it would be a low-scoring game. I thought they might cover the spread that I think was around 30.5 or 32, something like that. But we had seen from South Carolina State, outside, Bethune scored a couple late touchdowns when that game was mostly out of hand the week before they took on USF. But South Carolina, 38-10 game, 2 touchdowns of those 38 points scored came on punt returns. A low-scoring win to open the season versus Wofford. Just felt like if South Carolina State was going to have anything, they were going to have some defense, and that's pretty much what happened. Thankfully, though, defense was dynamite, as they have been all season, and putting points on the board for USF in the first quarter. Bulls able to turn it on in the second quarter. Again, defense was just suffocating. South Carolina State would tuck one in to make it 21-7 at half. And then we saw something that we really have not seen a ton of, and that is USF doing absolutely whatever they want. They just turned it on and found a level that is kind of what we have thought this offense is capable of, but just had not really seen much of. And I did not think Byron Brown looked great early. He was victim of a couple drops. One I thought was on his receiver. The other I thought was more on him. He just, I think, had time to make a better throw and didn't do it. But boy, did he get settled down. The Bulls really just wore South Carolina State out, which, again, is very refreshing. I am keeping the perspective that, yes, it is South Carolina State, but, I mean, they wore them out. And South Carolina State, by the end of that game, was ready to get on the bus. It was hot. I believe it was that game or the Bucs game. I mean, I'm sure it was pretty much the same each day. The broadcast had a shot of the thermostat on the field reading 120. It was hot. But the Bulls get the job done. Take a look at Byron Brown's final stat line. Finished 14-20, 236 yards, 4 touchdowns. Efficiency was just nauseating. I'm looking for time of possession because the numbers were insane. USF, their scoring drives averaged something like 35 seconds. It was just egregious. I'm going to do one more internet search here. I think I could have sworn that I retweeted somebody who put out a good recap of the numbers. Got to scroll through a lot of creamsicles from yesterday. Those jerseys were indeed beautiful. And I'm not seeing it. Hopefully that'll pop up as we're going along here. But storyline is USF offense operated at pretty much its highest level to put up 63 points on South Carolina State. Again, your final score 63-14. Bulls moved to 3-1, undefeated at home, and now have a bye week ahead of conference play starting. And it's going to start at home again versus Charlotte. Going to talk more about the American Athletic Conference scoreboard, some very notable finals this past weekend, but want to save that for tomorrow. For USF, though, 3-1 heading into conference play. That was pretty much everybody's best case scenario. Unless you are a real dreamer, you need to be absolutely thrilled with 3-1 and thrilled with what we have seen. Even in the Miami game that got a little bit out of hand, the defense was still fighting. If a few things go a different way, that game looks much more respectable. I don't think the Bulls win in too many of those scenarios versus Miami, but the defense was respectable. Miami takes care of Florida pretty convincingly. Not a big-time blowout. I think 28-7 was the final. They're the real deal. I believe it is next week that they will travel to Doak Campbell. Yeah, because I'm seeing Florida State has to go to Virginia. Miami might have a bye too, and that might be a big deal. Again, when we look tomorrow a little more at the scoreboard from around the state and around the conference, we'll take a look at that. I would not envy Florida State getting Miami off a bye week, especially after having to travel to a 3-1 Virginia team. But I digress. Gaston Moore did get in the game for USF. Not a lot to write home about. 4 of 6 for 16 yards, no touchdowns, no picks. Running game, pretty much everyone had a day without anyone getting the ball too much. Sam Franklin, 4 carries, 91 yards. That's a pretty healthy average. Pair of TDs as well for Franklin. Nakai Davenport had a strong game. Touchdown and 4 carries for 52 yards. Cartavius Norton, 4 carries for 48 yards. Alvon Isaac, not a ton of success out of the backfield. 7 carries, averaged 2 yards a carry. But from a special teams perspective, he was an absolute menace. 34 kick return yards and 110 punt return yards. The play-by-play crew on that game was basically saying at the end of it, South Carolina State with the special teams problems they've had, and of course not just with Alvon Isaac, but going back to the South Carolina game where they allowed 2 touchdowns, kick the ball out of bounds. You need to get more than 20, 30 yards a punt, but especially as that game wore on and USF really took it to South Carolina State, it was just detrimental. I mean, Isaac was putting every ball across midfield and giving a short field for USF to just rip right down. Made for a very fun game to watch. Hopefully the Bulls feeling a little more confident on offense, and again, getting ready for Charlotte, who I mentioned saw a little bit of that Charlotte-Rice game Thursday night last week. I really hope these words don't come back to bite me. It looked like a very good couple of high school football teams. Just looked hideous. And don't know if that could have been an illusion, but not a whole lot, I believe, to be worried about. So, great win for the Bulls. They take care of business. 3-1 heading into conference play. 2-0 at home. And the first game versus Charlotte will also be at Raymond James Stadium. Speaking of Ray J, it looked incredible yesterday for the 50th anniversary game. It was so cool to see a lot of guys there. Of course, Steve Spurrier, first ever quarterback in Bucs history, I think got to fire the cannons to start the game, which is very cool. seeing the guys that really highlight my childhood Bucs fandom, Warren Sapp, Rondé Barber, Mike Alstott, Derek Brooks, there with John Gruden. I saw Warwick Dunn there as well. Just very cool to see those guys back getting their recognition. I saw there was something like 150 players and coaches that were back for that game. The field looked incredible. The creamsicles looked incredible. And going into the fourth quarter, you thought, man, they've finally broken this creamsicle curse. And I remember the tweet was from Salty Buccaneer, and I don't know if I retweeted it or if I just committed it to memory. I must have just committed it to memory. It had to do with the difference between not just the creamsicles, but the white creamsicle jerseys. And let's see here. Lost in the shuffle. This is from @SaltyBuck91. Lost in the shuffle of yesterday's uniform pageantry. In 1976, the Bucs' inaugural season, the team went 0-14 with Steve Spurrier as quarterback. The cursed white creamsicle orange number jerseys, which just, again, could not have looked any better. I don't know what you change on those to make them look better, were retired after that winless season until yesterday when Baker Mayfield led a game-winning drive to give Tampa Bay its first win in those uniforms. So I'm not spoiling anything for anybody. The Bucs did exactly what they needed to do through 3 quarters. It was a hideous football game. 3-3 after 1. Heading into halftime, Bucs able to take a 20-6 lead, drive down the field to start the third quarter, kick a field goal to make it 23-6. Do not let that score fool you. If you did not get to watch the whole game, the offensive line was exactly what we thought it was going to be. I read some quotes after the game. They were getting praise for kind of maintaining their composure. It does seem almost, it was like, guys, look, this is not going to be pretty. We know it's not going to be pretty. Don't let them kill your quarterback and keep your head up. And for the most part, that is what this offensive line did. I believe I saw that there were 124 penalty yards whistled against, I don't know if it was the Bucs or the Bucs offense. It's the most penalty yards ever that the Bucs have been designated in a win. Truly had to grind this one out. Big shout out to the defense. Again, this is the first 3 quarters we're talking about here. Were really, really good. Jamel Dean with a pick 6. Had to feel great for him. Antoine Winfield is playing like a man possessed. He did not quite look like himself all of last season. He has been a monster and continues to be probably my favorite player on the defense, maybe favorite player to watch in the Bucs right now. Great game for Emeka Egbuka. Of course, one of the scary things of this game, the injury bug continuing to bite. Mike Evans leaves the game with an apparent hamstring. He was very emotional after that injury, which is never a good sign. However, would like to think maybe just some frustration, not being able to finish the game in the moment, recognizing the spot. We'll see. Before he left, 4 catches for 33 yards. Everything was just going swimmingly until the fourth quarter. And the way things unfolded, my dad, who is a diehard Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan and has been since '76, absolutely hates when the Bucs wear the creamsicles because it reminds him of that 0-14 season, the terrible teams, etc. And leading into the fourth quarter, I was like, I'm going to get to send my dad a text, say, hey, there's no curse, Bucs get it done. And then things just unraveled. Todd Bowles, I think, put it best. It's very cliche to say, a team just took their foot off the gas. That's exactly what the Bucs did. They were living in the moment, and they let Tyrod Taylor and the Jets hang around. And in the fourth quarter, Jets scored touchdowns on the only 2 drives they had. And then, trailing by 6, Bucs get down in field goal position thanks to some more just insanely clutch quarterback play from Baker Mayfield. McLaughlin had been good on the day, was 3 of 3 before this kick. Great play by the defender. I can't remember who it was that made the jump. Blocked field goal. There we are. Got to give credit where credit is due. Yeah, ESPN's being weird on me. Oh, it's Will McDonald. Jumps over the center, blocks the kick, picks it up, runs it back 50 yards for a touchdown, and minute 49 left on the clock. At that point, the creamsicle curse seemed like it may be coming back, although I have to say, aside from the frustration of that moment, I did not think the game felt over. That is what we have been spoiled with Baker Mayfield. And credit to the whole Bucs offense as well. But it is Baker who is really leading these last-minute drives that have gotten the Bucs now to 3-0. Gets them down the field, gets them in field goal position, and Chase McLaughlin could not have hit that any truer right down the middle. And I feel a little bit bad for Aaron Glenn. I think the guy's a great coach, and once they can get a quarterback in New York, is probably going to turn that into a pretty good team. When they blocked that kick, I think he thought the game was over, and he has been all over Twitter, dancing, hustling down the sideline. It did not go his way. Baker gets the Bucs in field goal position. Bucs win. Tweet here from @IJordanMoore, Moore. Baker Mayfield led a comeback in 3 straight weeks to give the Bucs a win from when they were down 2017 with 2:17 left against the Falcons, 19-14 deficit with 2:10 left, and most recently 27-26 with a minute 49 left on the clock. I feel two kinds of ways about this. The Bucs are 3-0, and there is nothing to be ashamed about because they have done this with as many injuries as any team in football. Initially, we look ahead to the Eagles, and you look at who we beat so far. We beat a Falcons team that we'll talk more on NFC South tomorrow, but just got dog-walked by the Carolina Panthers. You played a Texans team that looks horrendous so far offensively. Defensively, both teams have been pretty solid, especially the Texans. And then this Jets team took quite a bit to find your way past them. But through the injury issues that we've been dealing with, no Tristan Wirfs, our best offensive lineman, 2 more offensive linemen go down. You've got third stringers, guys coming out the practice squad and the street. Chris Godwin's still not back. You have to feel pretty good about that. And it's, again, another cliche. They do not ask how, just how many. Bucs are 3-0, one of, I believe, 6 teams remaining that are 3-0. And that feels very good. The opponent this coming week in the Philadelphia Eagles, I actually think is a little bit fraudulent. They had a great comeback win against a very good Rams team. I think the Eagles are good, very good. I don't know if they're great. Problem is, I don't know if the Bucs are great, especially right now either. Mike Evans, I do not expect to play. We'll see what injury news comes out. It would be very nice to get Chris Godwin back. Still, a little frustrating to not have the full receiver core, but that's just the way things go sometimes. Tristan Wirfs, we could use you, man. This offensive line without Tristan Wirfs, Mike Jordan, looks like there's a chance he could be back as well. If those 2 guys are not back, it could be a challenge. If they're back, I think this Bucs team will find a way to compete, but it's going to be a different monster. So I said last week I thought that this game versus the Jets was kind of sneaky huge. 3-0 feels great. 2-1 would obviously not have felt as great, especially if it happened the way that it nearly happened with that blocked field goal with under 2 minutes left to go being what iced it. Thankfully, that is not the case, and we move on. More NFL stuff coming up later in the week. Want to quickly mention a few things and work our way through the rest of Tampa Bay sports. Rob Higgins introduced today as the, oh my goodness, it's not the CEO of athletics, or is that what it is? I really should know this. Yes, CEO of athletics. Listen to the press conference. I think they might have had some streaming issues, but really exciting. And I don't think you go into these introductory press conferences expecting to learn a lot per se about the plans for the university, for the athletic department, etc. Rob Higgins did a couple things. Really demonstrated the passion he has for this university, which isn't anything I think anybody doubted, but he got the chance to detail it, which to me means a lot as someone who also loves USF and really shares the mindset of it's not, we are currently in a position where we are having to aim higher to get somewhere better. But I feel that's just the position we're in. It's not the reality that is soon to be for USF. I don't think there is a reason for anybody necessarily to have things better than we do. And I think Rob Higgins shares that philosophy. One thing I will dial in on and try and cut some audio from, had some very interesting thoughts to share, I guess, about conference realignment, and was not especially vague or indirect, which I think is very exciting. And I think he did it in a very tactful way, which is important as a current member of the American Athletic Conference. But the fact that he was willing to vocalize as much as he did should excite USF fans and give you a degree of confidence, I do believe, based off where Rob has been, what he has done. I do not think he is a empty promises, empty words kind of guy. So more coming on that later. I do have a Tampa Bay Rays article I want to read. It was in the Tampa Bay Times. Take a quick peek at the show notes here. See if they're... Oh, another thing we'll talk about later in the week. I felt strange going into this college football season. It seems like UCF fans are as down on their team as anybody. They're getting a little more confident now that they're 4-0. Like, I don't have a ton of doubt that Scott Frost is going to be successful at UCF, whether you love him or hate him. And trust me, I hate him. I feel like that's how most USF fans I've talked to feel, that, he's back there, they'll be solid. It'll take some time, but the UCF fans in my life, of which there are several, made it seem like, we might not win more than 2 games this year. And I just found that hard to believe with the not what they expect to be the standard, but still good players there, and what I think is a very good coach in Scott Frost. And sure enough, they beat the Belichicks on Saturday and moved to, I believe, 4-0. So I just don't really understand why everyone was so down on them. It's never good when I'm the one having to defend Central. That's not the Rays note. Correcting an error, and it wasn't really an error, it was a lack of knowledge. Benchmark International Arena, home of the Tampa Bay Lightning. Lightning with their first preseason game tonight. I want to say it's against the Hurricanes. I'm not 100% sure where it is. Indeed, in Carolina. Tonight, 7 o'clock Eastern, Lightning. Hurricanes. Keep an eye on that. Never a ton of stuff to glean from the preseason, but you just want everyone to stay healthy, which unfortunately, again, for later in the week, has not necessarily been the case. Sounds like there is some concerning Andrei Vasilevsky news that we will talk about. Want to end Monday with some Rays news. Mark Topkin reporting that the Rays sale has been approved by MLB owners. The Zalupski-led group good to go. The group led by, this is out of the Tampa Bay Times, led by Jacksonville developer Patrick Zalupski, went through an extensive process to get approved by Major League Baseball Monday as the new owners of the Tampa Bay Rays. The sale for roughly $1.7 billion is expected to be formally completed later this week, which will include approval from the Federal Trade Commission and money transferred. Quote, "It's good to go," MLB Commissioner Rob Manfred told the Times after the owners voted unanimously to approve Zalewski. "It's official in terms of our internal processes, subject just to their closing, but it's always subject to the closing taking place." Toppin goes on, "Neither the Rays nor Zalewski's group had any comment. Now comes the hard part for the new owners. They take over from Stuart Sternberg at a critical juncture. There is no long-term stadium plan. Tropicana Field is in the early phases of an extensive repair to be ready for a scheduled April 6th reopening, and the team has missed the playoffs for a second straight season and is headed for another sub-500 record." Manfred spoke highly of Zalewski, who will be the designated control person with Major League Baseball and his partners. Manfred said, "I think Patrick is going to be a great addition, deeply committed to Tampa Bay region as home for the Rays, and I look forward to getting past the closing and starting work with the club. We like that." The group slated to take over daily operations of the team following Sunday's season finale is expected to hold a news conference in the near future to share initial plans. Sternberg bought into the team in 2004 and took control after the 2005 season from original owner Vince Naimoli, paying a reported $200 million. Not bad ROI if you can get it. Article continues, "The franchise enjoyed great success on the field under Sternberg, transitioning from one of the worst teams to among the best, following its 2008 rebranding from Devil Rays to Rays, making the playoffs 9 times in a 16-year stretch, including 2 trips to the World Series, though losing both. But attendance at Tropicana Field remained among the worst in the majors, and the group failed to get a new stadium built. An agreement for a new facility was reached and celebrated in the summer of 2024, but the Rays pulled out of the deal in March 2025, citing increased costs as a result of delays in post-agreement issues and damage from Hurricanes Helen and Milton. The new group emerged from a field of 3 to 4 interested parties, including one led by Tampa businessman Joe Malloy, to buy the team and seemed to have the backing of Major League Baseball. Zalewski is the founder and CEO of Dreamfinder Homes and has a net worth of $1.3 billion and has political connections, serving on the UF Board of Trustees with ties to Governor Ron DeSantis, including as a big campaign donor. He will be joined in running the team by Bill Cosgrove, CEO of Union Home Mortgage, who is expected to serve in a co-chairman role, and Ken Babby, who owns minor league teams in Akron, Ohio, Jacksonville, will serve as the chief executive officer. Among the limited partners with significant investments are Dan Doyle, CEO of Tampa Bay-based office equipment company Dex Imaging, which has been a longtime Rays sponsor, and Rick Workman, founder of Heartland Dental Services and chair of the executive advisor team at the private equity firm New Harbor Capital. Workman lives in Orlando and until recently had been the anchor investor of the group, seeking to bring a team there. He and prominent personal injury attorney John Morgan both withdrew from the Orlando group in early September. Another known member of the 10 or so person group, which is said to include prominent Tampa Bay investors, is Tampa lawyer Fred Ridley, who is also chairman of the Augusta National Golf Club and the Masters. Sternberg and his partners will retain, as we touched on last week, a small share of the team, around 10% as part of the sale agreement. The new group is said to want to keep the core of the baseball operations staff, led by baseball operations president Eric Neander and manager Kevin Cash, intact, but to make some changes on how the business side of the franchise operates. Again, if you listened last week, we insinuated that there is a lot to like about the Rays. The problems, I believe, is what they're touching on the business side, and not specifically the day-to-day of the Tampa Bay Rays, but more of the big picture moving and shaking that you would expect owners and presidents to be a part of. The team's 2 longtime presidents, the article continues, are stepping down from their post. Matt Silverman, a top executive since Sternberg first got involved with the Rays, is leaving the organization, but will remain involved by serving on an advisory board representing Sternberg and his partners. Brian Ault, who joined the team in 2005, will stay for now, shifting to a senior advisor role to help the new group through the transition and potentially beyond, handling a variety of matters. Ald also will remain vice chairman of the Tampa Bay Rowdies, the USL franchise that is also part of the sale, that has been playing at Alling Stadium and may also need a new home. Article concludes, once the introductions are complete, the new group is expected to work earnestly on solving the stadium issue. Zalewski's group is still expected to focus, at least initially, on Hillsborough County options, with reports they have already visited at least two in the Ybor and Hillsborough College area adjacent to Steinbrenner Field, where the Rays played this season. New owners might need to work on a short-term lease extension at Tropicana Field, as the current agreement runs only through the 2028 season. A $1.7 billion sale price would not only be a hefty return on Sternberg's original investment. The team was valued earlier this season at $1.25 billion by Forbes, $1.35 billion by Sportico, and the Orioles were sold last year for a reported $1.73 billion. What this article touches on is that the steps are being taken, the dominoes are falling, and as we discussed last week, more of a recap, critical in some areas more so of Stu Sternberg than the Rays themselves. There is so much to like about the Rays team, and the criticism for Stuart Sternberg, for me, has nothing to do, from an outsider's perspective, with the team on the field. The Tampa Bay Rays, since he has been the owner, have made the most of what they have on the field. And I think, the intentions to keep Eric Neander are wise. From a day-to-day business standpoint, I appreciated a lot that the Rays did, both as a kid growing up there, as a fan in the stadium, as a fan watching from afar. From social media to ticket packages, a lot of creativity. A lot of good ideas. But at the core of everything, all of that really can only do so much. Winning goes a very long way, as we saw when the Rays were in the World Series playoffs, great crowds. But as an owner of a team, as soon as you voice the desire to leave, you are alienating the fans closest to you. And as has been discussed for a while, the fans that frequented Tropicana Field the most were the ones close by. Pinellas County has continued to grow, as has Hillsborough. And I still am of the opinion that too much leverage was applied too early. There was an article from a long time ago, and I want to see if I wrote the date down. 2013 article. And it was discussing the creation of the Hancock Bank Club in Tropicana Field, some improvements to the interior of the ballpark, some new video board, sound system that was really being touted as a huge improvement to Tropicana Field. From 2005, when the team was purchased, to 2013, the Rays invested $20 million in the stadium. I'm not sure if that is just funds the Rays put in and the city may have put in more. The article suggested that it was the Rays committing that money. That shakes out to about $2.25 million a year. In stadium world, that is nothing. And it syncs with my concern that the Rays played at Tropicana Field and positioned that stadium to be viewed as untenable. I don't believe it is. Ultimately, had the Rays done that, and the Sternberg ownership group and team got their stadium, who knows? Maybe it would have been built in Tampa. maybe people would have flocked there. But when you buy the team in 2005, 2006, and 5 or 6 years later, you're already talking about needing a new stadium. In the years after that, you're talking about needing to move the team. And in the years after that, you start throwing out ideas like playing half a season here, half a season in Montreal. Do not expect the people that live close to that stadium 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour to show up and support you. You cannot blame baseball fans in St. Petersburg and Tampa for not buying into a team that has been threatened to move for 15 years. That's going to do it for us today. A lot to talk about this week. It was a great weekend in Tampa Bay sports. Appreciate you tuning in. We will be right back tomorrow. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter if you are not already at Tampa Bay times 2. That is at Tampa Bay, the letter X, the number 2. Or email us, Tampa Bay times 2 at gmail.com. That is Tampa Bay, the letter X, the number 2 at gmail.com. Have a good night.